So my brothers and my sisters, as we embrace this urgency of creating the beloved community, now is the time to be love. Love means understanding redemptive goodwill toward all which seeks nothing in return. So be love by implementing the demands of justice to eliminate the school to prison pipeline that has so many black children entrapped. Be love by correcting voting policies that seek to suppress the votes of millions of black and brown people. Be love and implement the demands of justice by transforming a society that is disproportionately violent toward black lives, including black transgendered lives and indigenous lives. Be love and correct false narratives and economic policies that continue to divide and pit poor and working class black and white people against each other. Be love and implement demands of justice where systems and structures are deconstructed and lead the way of living in community that reimagines just, humane, equitable, and sustainable policies, practices, and behaviors. Love your enemies. Bless them that curse you. Do good to them who hate you, and pray for them that despitefully use you and abuse you. Be love and do justice and love mercy and walk humbly with our God.
Good morning. Welcome to our program today. What an awesome message we just heard. It is so great to be a part of the beloved community, and each of us can have an opportunity to join in on the Be Love movement. Good morning, teachers and students. Once again, on behalf of Dr. Felicia A. King, welcome. We are committed to building the beloved community. Join us today and enjoy yourself as we go forth with a dynamite speaker today that will share with you. So, teachers, I'd like to remind you that we need your feedback. In order to get your feedback, we want you to take a survey. You see the scan here? We want you to take out your phones right now, go to your pictures, and scan so you will have the survey. We need your feedback in order to make this program even more effective. So please, at the end, take the survey. Students, this program is designed for you. We want you to join in by asking questions. But now I'm ready to turn the show over to our moderator. Our moderator today is Ms. Deidre Dukes.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning,
Thanks for having me today.
It's so glad to have you, and know it's going to be a wonderful show. And so I don't want to hold the students up. I'm turning it over to you now.
All right. Well, thank you. We are going to have a great morning today. We are about to hear from an amazing speaker. But before we do that, before we have this conversation, we want to hear from you students. We want you to be engaged. So what I want to do right now is sort of a roll call. I like Blessed Thursday morning from Brooklyn, Princess Ben James. Good morning. Blessed Thursday morning indeed. We want to hear from all of you. Where are you joining us from? A roll call. I'm taking a roll call. Who's next? Where are you joining us from? It's time for that state roll call shout out. Tell us what state you're joining us from. Loves to you as well, Bishan Allen. Thank you for joining us. Where are you all joining us from today? Colleyville, Texas. All right, Laura Lehman. Thank you, Laura, for joining us. It's great to have you with us today. Bishan is joining us from Virginia. That's right. Keep them coming. Keep them coming. We want to know who's out there. UFO joining us from Mississippi. Great to have you with us today. Westchester School District, live in Chester, Pennsylvania. I spent some years in Pennsylvania. It's great to know that you all are joining us today. Joining from Ghana, wonderful, wonderful. We have an international audience today, and we certainly love that here. I know, especially at the King Center, we love to know that we're reaching such a wide audience. Still have time for a few more shout outs. Fort Worth, Texas, Robin Simmons. Welcome, Robin, from Fort Worth, Texas. Time for a few more. Good morning from Atlanta, Georgia. Hey, that's my home state and my city, Atlanta, Georgia. Glad that you're joining us today. And it's so wonderful that the King Center is providing this program on a virtual platform. In past years, we've been at the King Center, but with COVID, we've had to change things up a bit. And the King Center is doing a great job bringing this virtual program to you today. Wonderful. First time live from Ohio, Jeannie Rhodes, Prince James Fabika, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, from Nigeria. Thank you for joining us. Well, at this time, as you keep those that roll call coming, another gentleman joining us from Nigeria, we are going to get this program underway. In just a few moments, you'll be hearing a wonderful conversation with Dr. Felicia Bolden Mobley. She is the daughter of civil rights veteran and minister, the late Reverend Willie Bolden. And we're going to have a wonderful conversation, and we want this to be an engaging interaction. So just as you all have shared with me where you're joining us today, we also would like to make sure that you have an opportunity to ask questions. So please send those questions our way. Make sure that you drop them in the chat, and I'll be sure to ask Dr. Mobley those questions today during our discussion. But right now, I'd like to just take an opportunity to play a video where we're going to give you a little more background about her and also, excuse me, who she is and her many achievements.
Welcome to our Students with King Nonviolent Spotlight series. Today we are going to tell you about an amazing person who is helping to change the world. When you hear her awesome story, it will hopefully spark something in you to make a difference and make your community better for everybody. Our spotlight person is Mrs. Felicia Bolden Mobley. To some, Felicia Bolden Mobley is bright, innovative, and driven. To others, she's witty, dependable, and strong. To her family and friends, she is a Christian woman who loves God. Felicia is faithful and loyal, striving every day to make this world a better place. Yes, she is an Atlanta native and daughter of a civil rights veteran and minister, the late Reverend Willie M. Bolden, and retired university administrator, Dr. Georgiana Bolden. Her father was the wagon master for the 1968 mule train from Marks, Mississippi to Washington, D.C. for the Poor People's Campaign. He organized demonstrations in the Deep South where, said those who knew him, he was often beaten, sometimes while protecting others from the clubs and fists of police. Felicia enrolled in Xavier University of Louisiana, where she graduated cum laude with a Bachelor of Science degree in biology, minor in chemistry, and honors with distinction in English. Continuing her academic pursuits, she received a master's degree in health administration from Washington University School of Medicine in St. Louis, Missouri. She also received a PhD in health sciences from Northern Illinois University in DeKalb, Illinois. Over the last 15 years, Felicia has established a successful career in healthcare administration, holding numerous positions in healthcare management to include nonprofit, academic hospital, and university sectors. Felicia's involvement in professional, public service, and volunteer organizations is equally rewarding. She is a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated and the Greater Metropolitan Atlanta chapter of Jack and Jill of America Incorporated. Her personal mantra, which has guided her decisions since the age of 12, says, "If better is possible, good is not enough."
Good morning. So glad to be here.
Good morning, Dr. Mobley. Thank you so much for joining us today. Look forward to a wonderful conversation with you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And please call me Felicia.
All right, Felicia, and you call me Deidre.
Will do.
And we want to remind those who are joining us today virtually that we want to give you the opportunity to ask Dr. Mobley, Felicia, questions as well. So please make sure that you drop your questions in the chat and we'll get started. And Dr. Mobley, Felicia, if you could please just share with us the role your father played in the civil rights movement.
Yes, thank you so much again. My father was what had the term a foot soldier. And so his job was, along with others, is in advance of demonstrations in various cities. They would go in to train the individuals, demonstrators, to ensure that they were very clear on the message of nonviolence. I often think about when you see the images of the demonstrators across the country in various parts of the South, to understand that there was a lot of background work that was involved. So he was a foot soldier, making sure that before Dr. King arrived in an area that they understood and could promote that mission. He also was instrumental in orchestrating the swim in St. Augustine, Florida, in which it was an opportunity they wanted to integrate hotels. And so, again, made sure that the world could see the injustices that were happening among African Americans and to be able to push legislation. And then finally, a few years later, as the video suggested, was a wagon master. And they actually took a mule train from Marks, Mississippi, which is one of the poorest areas in the South, all the way to DC, again, to try to push for legislation for equal housing, equal pay, economic justice, environmental justice, things that we are still fighting for today. So his legacy continues to live on as we are still fighting many of those issues.
And Felicia, while it was very much a nonviolent movement, it was quite dangerous work. If you could talk about that.
Absolutely. I remember my father telling stories about how he even became involved with the civil rights movement when he met Dr. King in Savannah, Georgia, as a young man in his early 20s and went on to work with him for several years. That when Dr. King would go into various cities, in particular when he went into Savannah, Georgia, my father met Dr. King through Hosea Williams, is a beloved civil rights hero here in our state and in our city and beyond. And one of the things that he always talked about was he never thought that he, as a person who grew up in Savannah, who was in the Marine Corps, to be able to support and really hold the principle of nonviolence. And so they went through trainings. We hear different statements like turn the other cheek, look the other way, be the bigger person. It's easier said than done. But back then, the members of the civil rights community were very, very intentional with wanting to make sure that the message was not distorted of the why. And so it would be very easy to distort, they're being violent, they're criminals, or they're doing things that are disruptive. But when you take that narrative away, it forces the others to hear that message. And if you hear stories, my father said he never thought that he would be that person who would embrace nonviolence, but he did and went on to become a minister and to continue to preach nonviolence all the way up until his death.
And how did your father come to meet Dr. King?
Yes, it's a very funny story. Actually, my father worked as a assistant bell captain at a hotel in Savannah, Georgia. And so for those of you who don't know what a bell captain is, it's basically you help people bring their bags into the hotel. And at the time, his job, because they were having protests in the center of the city, his job was to make sure that the doors were locked at the end of the evening because, again, the protesters were there because they wanted to integrate the hotel. And so one particular day, he was just moved that he decided he wasn't going to unlock the door, that he wasn't going to lock the door. So he left the door unlocked. And of course, the protesters or the demonstrators were able to come in, do a sit-in in the hotel lobby. Of course, he lost his job afterwards. But part of what they would do when civil rights activists would come into the area or to a community, they would bring Dr. King around various areas to show that he was in the community. He was not this larger than life person, just a regular guy, so that they could meet him in various places. So my father liked to play pool. And so he actually met Dr. King in a pool hall. They played a game of pool, and he invited him to come to a rally later on that evening. And so my father went to the rally, and the rest was history. He went on to work for SCLC and be again that foot soldier that would go in and do a lot of training and mentoring to young people. Because again, even though we're talking about in the early 1960s, these were young people, middle-aged people, older people who were frustrated, who were mad, who were upset. But he wanted to make sure, and they wanted to make sure again, that the message of equal rights, the message that we are all people and we all deserve to have a quality of life, to keep that in the forefront.
And Felicia, what was it like for you having parents who were so actively involved in the movement on the front lines?
So let me tell you, Deidre, you know how people always say, oh, I was there when. And so I would hear stories about my dad, and he talked about when he marched across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama. He talked about being at the March on Washington. He talked about the march in St. Augustine, Florida. And you heard it, but you really didn't understand the extent of it. While I am a very young person at heart, I'm not that young. And so when I was growing up, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have YouTube. We didn't have the ability to see a lot of that footage. I did remember that as a child, I could never get perfect attendance because on Dr. King's birthday, January 15th, I was always out of school. It was a day of service. I would get up in the morning. If it meant going to feed those who had food insecurities on the southwest side of Atlanta, if it meant going to marches or going to the ecumenical service, whatever it was always a day of service for me. And I will tell you, when I really understood the impact of my father was actually when he died. And it was at the funeral that you just heard so many stories that people shared about how he touched their lives. And then I just, started Googling and said, oh my goodness, because he was dad. I mean, he was at every football game that I cheered, or every Friday night game when I was in the band at Thurl High School here in Atlanta. He was a regular guy, but to know that he made a true impact on history has always been a part of who I am. And I vow to continue his legacy after he passed away. It's a funny story as well. I got married around the Martin Luther King holiday, and my father could. And typically a person would be like, "Oh, you would be upset that he wasn't there." But I always knew he was on the speaking circuit, so he was in Bosnia, I think, or he was in some other foreign country, because his duty was to serve. And so I've always recognized that I shared him with the world, but I thought that it was an honor for me to be his daughter, and I also find it an honor to continue his legacy today.
You spoke on how you continue his legacy. If you could share more on that, and if you could share with students maybe things they could do to do the same.
Absolutely. One of the ways that I continue his legacy is I always approach life from a social justice lens. I recognize that while we have made very good accomplishments. We've been able to go to school. We're able to live in neighborhoods, that I realize that there are still people who have less than. So I try to ensure that whatever I do in work or in the community, in organizations that I'm a part of, that I'm always considering, what about that other side? What can we do to ensure that we are continuing to uplift our sisters and brothers? I work in public health. And so a lot of what I'm doing is really trying to make sure that the health of the residents where I live continue to be healthy, to make sure that we are holding people accountable with our policies, to ensure that we're exercising our right to vote, whatever your voting preference is, but understanding that people lost their lives to give us that right. So it saddens me at times when I see poor turnouts for elections, because I realize that people lost their lives for that opportunity. And sometimes we get complacent. So what I would tell young people is to continue to find your voice, whatever it is that you are passionate about, to ensure that you are a voice for the voiceless. I also would encourage them not to stand on the sidelines, but to get involved, to figure out how can you help someone as you are passing through your journey called life. I also would encourage individuals to know that when you're living, you're not just living for yourself, you're living for those who came before you and those who will come long after you. So thinking about it from a global perspective, thinking about it from a perspective of how can I be of help? How can I be of service? How can I use my influence to evoke positive change? And now we have so many platforms with social media and other outlets that we can all stand on the top of the mountains to bring awareness to issues that are important to us.
Oh, that is so true. At this time, we're going to take some questions from our audience members, our students, and others out there who may have some questions for us. Just drop them in the comment chat box there, and we'll be sure to have Felicia answer those questions for you. Oh, yes. Thank you so much. It is an awesome conversation, isn't it, Ashanti Evans? Yes, it certainly is. And we really appreciate Felicia taking the time out of her day to share with us so many important memories, special memories about her dad and his role in the movement. So ask your questions, and as you drop your questions in the box there, we do want to remind those who are watching us and joining us today that the King Center's Leadership Academy is a really unique experience geared towards youth and young adults, age 13 to 17. So you want to make the most of that. Felicia, we have a question. Would you tell how your dad involved you in the march in Forsyth County with Hosea Williams and the Klan?
Oh, yes. Okay. So again, one of those experiences that my father wanted to ensure that I had the opportunity to really understand where I came from and the struggles that others had. And in Forsyth, Georgia, which was a predominantly white area, they were having a lot of racial tension in the area. There was injustices as it related to individuals on their jobs and how they were treated in the area. And so they organized a march. And so this was my first time, and I think I was about 9 or 10 years old, where I actually participated in the march. And so it was my father, Jose Williams, Reverend James Orange, Tyrone Brooks. These are all civil rights leaders and others who were there. Those are just the ones who are on my frontal lobe. And we walked down this main street. And I remember saying, as we were walking down the street, I had never seen a person with a Ku Klux Klan hood on. And they were lining the streets of Forsyth County. And this is not in the 60s or the 70s. We're talking about the 80s. And you can imagine my mouth just dropped. I was like, are you serious? I mean, they really, I knew they existed, but I saw little kids with hoods on their heads. And we were walking down the street and we were yelling, Black power, Black power. And they were on the sidelines screaming, white power, white power. And it really helped me understand that love is taught, but hate is taught as well. And that if you choose to teach love, if you choose to teach inclusion, if you choose to teach tolerance, we can still coexist if we have a difference of opinion. And so that memory was forever etched in my mind, in terms of recognizing that we have come a long way, but we still have a long way to go. We integrated our neighborhood in 1980. And I remember not being able to play with my neighbor next door because her parents said she couldn't play with my kind. Again, hurtful as a child, because I'm like, we go to school together. Why can't we play together? So I always had these opportunities to self-reflect on my experiences growing up in the South, but also was able to use that as a point of reference as I try to expose my children to different opportunities to understand that we're all in this together. And it, just to reiterate, the movement was just not African American. There were people from all races, all walks of life who participated because they all knew that a better way of living was possible, and they had to work together to make it happen.
Indeed, indeed. From Heather McConnell, she says her students are so excited. She wants to know, what are your favorite parts of your job? What is the weirdest food combination you enjoy? And what are your favorite games to play on family game nights?
Oh, great questions. Okay. So the favorite part of my job is being able to think strategically on how we can help others. Of course, we live in a society where things are very organized and structures are in place. And so my job is to think about how can we work within those confines to ensure that we're increasing the health and wellness of all people. How do we make connections with people in the community? I enjoy meeting people. And when I meet people, I meet them from the lens of how can I help you? Or how can you help me on a common purpose as it relates to health, achieving health equity, which I'm very, very passionate about. The weirdest food combination. I am somewhat of a picky eater, so I don't really put a lot of foods together. So I don't have a weird combination, but I can eat all of my food at the same time. And I know that some people, like my daughter, she likes to eat one thing at a time. So she likes eats one part of her plate. I can put it all together. It doesn't bother me because I feel like it's all going down the same place. What are my favorite games? With my son, I love to play Jenga. We play dominoes because it's a great learning game for numbers. But I also like playing dominoes with my friends. I like listening to music. And I also like to play Bid Whist, which is like a card game. My husband taught me how to play, so I enjoy playing that as well.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Great questions.
Alicia, what's your takeaway? What would you like to leave students with, both from the experiences that your father shared with you, what you learned by watching your father and your mom doing their work, and how you've carried it into your own passions in your own life?
The one thing I would take away, or I would like everyone to understand, is that everyone, and I mean this literally, every single solitary person can pick one thing and make a difference with that one thing. When I think about my father, who was a very simple man, when he met Dr. King, he was in his early 20s. I mean, he was working as an assistant bell captain in a hotel. So you don't have to feel as if you have to be this accomplished individual to make a difference. You can take something in your school that you are finding important, a particular issue or topic that you want to discuss and research, and do your part. I think if we all collectively get together, the lift won't be so heavy. When we think about the civil rights movement and things that they were able to accomplish, like with the Montgomery bus boycott, with the march to march on Washington, marching across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. You didn't see Dr. King on that bridge by himself. He had other people from all walks of life who came together for a common purpose. So don't think that you have to do it by yourself. Figure out who you can bring together in your circle to just sit and brainstorm and say, what can I do? What can I do to make a difference? It was spoken about briefly in the video, but at 12 years old, I went to Ralph Johnson Bunch Middle School here in Atlanta, and Dr. Alfonso G. Jones Jr., I'll never forget, was our principal. And he made us memorize that quote, if better is possible, good is not enough. So what does that mean? If you know that you can make a good grade without studying, that's good, right? Because you have a talent. But if you know that if you put in a little effort and a little work, that you can do even better on your assignment or on your test, then that's what matters. So just making sure that we strive for excellence in all we do, continue to promote nonviolence. It saddens me when I see so much about gun violence, about people losing their lives senselessly. But we have to come together and say enough is enough, and that we're going to work together to have that beloved community that Dr. Bernice King pushes and the King Center promotes, because we know that together we can make a difference.
Together we can, together we are, certainly, indeed. Thank you so much, Dr. Mobley, for sharing this important experience with us here today. Your conversation has really just helped these students learn more, not only about your father and his great work, but the movement as well overall. So thank you so much. And we have a question. So much. Thank you. And we have a question. Can you explain the 365 training curriculum? And we are about to do just that. Actually, we're going to do just that. We know that there are so many people out there who want to know what can they do, as Dr. Mobley has expressed. So many people who can do more, who can continue to be involved in Dr. King's work, in the movement to promote nonviolent social change. And right now, we're going to show you a video just to give you an idea of one thing that you can do that will carry a long way to learning more about this important work.
Nonviolence is the answer to the crucial political and moral questions of our time. The need for man to overcome oppression and violence without resorting to violence and oppression. Man must evolve for all human conflict a method which rejects revenge, aggression, and retaliation. The foundation of such a method is love.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. changed the world when he demonstrated what could be achieved through nonviolence. Now, you can learn how to live and practice this philosophy yourself through Nonviolence 365 Online, an innovative digital experience developed by the Martin Luther King Jr. Center for Nonviolent Social Change. Nonviolence 365 Online features extensive video interviews with real nonviolence practitioners, including the King Center CEO Dr. Bernice A. King, King Center certified instructors and trainers, and veterans of the civil rights movement. Explorations of the historic campaigns that helped Dr. King forge his philosophy. Immersive, annotated reading experiences that enhance Dr. King's most influential writings on nonviolence. Custom activities, including quizzes and interactive scenarios to help you practice along the way. Real-world exercises to help you start applying nonviolence in your daily life. Nonviolence 365 is a love-centered way of thinking, speaking, engaging, and acting that leads to personal, cultural, and societal transformation. It isn't just a concept for philosophers or political leaders. Nonviolence 365 is a powerful, practical approach to dealing with conflict and dismantling injustice. Whether it's in your personal life, in your school or workplace, your local community, or a national movement. Dr. King, Mrs. Coretta Scott King, and many others sought to create the beloved community, a society built on global cooperation and equity. This wasn't a lofty utopian dream. It's a realistic and achievable goal because each and every one of us has the power to make it happen by committing to nonviolence as a way of life. Take the first step today with Nonviolence 365 online.
And we do hope that you'll go online and find out more about that opportunity. It's a wonderful program, just launched here recently at the King Center. And so we do hope you'll take some time today to go online and find out more. And teachers, we do want to remind you the importance of feedback. So please take that survey. You see the QR code there. It will only take a moment to take that survey. At this time, I'm going to turn it back over to Donald.
Thank you, Deidre, and thank you, Dr. Mobley, for a wonderful, wonderful conversation we had today. I also want to thank the teachers for participating, and I trust that it was a helpful experience for you. Once again, I would like to ask teachers to please fill out the survey. Without your feedback, we cannot improve. And remember, students and teachers, to take the pledge. Go to our website and also check out the application for the Leadership Academy. Thanks again for attending, and we hope you have a wonderful day and be a positive influence within the beloved community. Thank you.